My name is Anna. I was 23 years old when I received the letter that changed my life. At that time, I lived in a busy city called Westbridge. It was a large city with tall buildings, crowded streets, noisy buses, and thousands of people. I worked in a small bookstore near the train station. Every morning, I walked to work. Every evening, I walked home. My life was simple. I worked, I ate, I slept. Then I did the same thing again the next day. I had a small apartment on the fourth floor of an old building. The apartment was not beautiful, but it was comfortable. There was a small kitchen, a bedroom, a bathroom, and a living room with one large window. From my window, I could see the street below. I could see cars. I could see people. I could see buses. Sometimes I could see the moon between the buildings, but I could not see the stars. I often thought about my childhood. I grew up in a small village called Maple Hill. Maple Hill was very different from Westbridge. There were no tall buildings. There were no busy roads. There was a large green field behind my house. There was a forest near the village, and there was an old railway line. My father used to take me to the railway station when I was a child. We would sit on a wooden bench and watch the trains. There was one special train. It was an old blue train. It passed through Maple Hill every Saturday morning. The train went to a place called Blue Lake. I had never been there. My father had promised to take me one day. One day, Anna, he always said, one day we will take the blue train. But that day never came. When I was 12, my father became sick. When I was 14, he died after that. My mother and I moved away from Maple Hill. We left the old house. We left the railway station. We left the forest. We left the blue train behind. For many years, I tried not to think about it, but sometimes I remembered my father's voice. One day, Anna. Then, one rainy Tuesday morning, the letter arrived. I was standing behind the bookstore counter. An old man entered the shop. He was wearing a dark coat and carrying a brown envelope. "Are you Anna Miller?" he asked. "Yes." He gave me the envelope. "This is for you." I looked at it. My name was written on the front. Anna Miller. There was no address. There was no stamp. Who sent this? The old man smiled. "Someone who knew your father." Before I could ask another question, he walked out of the shop. I stood there, holding the envelope. My hands felt cold. I opened it carefully. Inside was a letter. The letter said, "Dear Anna, I hope you are well. You probably do not remember me. My name is Thomas Green. Many years ago, I worked with your father. He asked me to contact you when the right time came. I believe that time has come. There is something waiting for you in Maple Hill. It is connected to your father, if you want to. No more. Come to the old railway station next Saturday at 10 in the morning. I will be there. Please come alone. Thomas." I read the letter twice. Then I read it again. My father had asked him to contact me. Why? What was waiting for me in Maple Hill? I had so many questions. That evening, I called my mother. "Mum, do you know a man named Thomas Green?" There was a long silence. "Thomas Green? Yes. Where did you hear that name?" "He sent me a letter." My mother became quiet. "Anna, what did the letter say?" I told her. When I finished, she sighed. "I knew this day might come." "What do you mean? Your father left something behind." "What? I don't know." "You don't know?" "He never told me everything." I sat down. "Why didn't you tell me?" "I wanted to protect you." "From what?" "I don't know." My mother sounded tired. "Your father had many secrets." I did not know what to say. "Should I go?" Another silence. Then my mother said, "Yes." "Are you sure?" "Yes." "Why?" "Because you have spent too many years running away from your past." Her words stayed in my mind. That night, I could not sleep. I thought about my father. I thought about Maple Hill. I thought about the old railway station. And I thought about the blue train. Maybe it was time to return. On Saturday morning, I woke up before sunrise. I packed a small bag. I put some clothes inside. I took my phone. I took some money, and I took the old photograph of my father. I looked at the photograph before putting it in my bag. My father was standing beside the railway station. He was young. He was smiling. I touched the photograph. I am going back, Dad. Then I left my apartment. The train to Maple Hill left Westbridge at 7:30. I arrived at the station early. There were many people. Some were going to work. Some were traveling. Some were carrying large bags. I found my platform. The train arrived. I got on. I found a seat near the window as the train moved away from the city. The tall buildings slowly disappeared. The streets became smaller. The buildings became shorter than there were. Fields. Green, fields. Trees, small houses. I watched everything through the window. After 2 hours, I saw the sign. Maple Hill. My heart started beating faster. I got off the train. The station looked almost the same. There was the old wooden bench. There was the small ticket office. There was the large clock, but everything looked older. I stood on the platform. For a moment, I felt like I was 12 years old again. I could almost hear my father's voice. "Look, Anna, the train is coming." Then someone spoke behind me. "Anna." I turned around. An old man was standing there. He had gray hair and kind eyes. He was holding a walking stick. "Mr. Green," he smiled. "Yes." I walked toward him. "Thank you for coming. I have many questions." "I know. Why did you write to me?" "Because your father asked me to." "When?" 20 years ago. I stared at him. 20 years? Yes. Why did he ask you? Thomas looked toward the railway tracks. "Your father knew that one day you would want answers." "What answers?" He looked at me. "About Blue Lake." I felt confused. "What is at Blue Lake?" "Something your father wanted you to find." "What?" "You will see." "Why can't you tell me?" "Because it is not my story." He started walking. I followed him. We left the station. The road was quiet. The village looked smaller than I remembered. There was the bakery, there was the school, there was the little grocery store. Then I saw my old house. It stood at the end of a narrow road. The house looked empty. The garden was full of grass. The windows were dirty. I stopped. "This was my home." Thomas nodded, double quotes, "Yes." "Who owns it now?" "No one." "What? Your father left it in your name." I looked at him. "My name?" "Yes." I could not believe it. Why didn't my mother tell me? Perhaps she wanted you to forget. I walked toward the front door. The key was under an old flower pot. I remembered that my father had always kept the key there. I picked it up. I opened the door. The smell of the house immediately brought back memories. The wooden floor, the old curtains, the small kitchen, the stairs. Everything felt familiar. Walked into the living room. There was an old chair near the window. My father used to sit there every evening. I touched the chair. Then I saw something on the wall. I photographed it. Showed my father beside a young man. The young man was Thomas. I turned around. "You knew my father very well." "Yes." "How?" "We worked together on the railway." "The railway?" Thomas nodded. "Your father was a railway engineer." I knew my father had worked with trains, but I had never known the details. "What did he do?" "He repaired old railway lines." "Why didn't I know?" "Because your father did not want you involved." "Involved in what?" Thomas looked at me. "The Blue Lake Railway." We sat in the living room. Thomas placed an old folder on the table. He opened it. Inside were maps, photographs, old papers, and railway plans. "This railway used to connect Maple Hill with Blue Lake," he said. I remember the train. It was more than a passenger train. What do you mean? It carried supplies, food, tools, and people. Why did it stop an accident, when 22 years ago? I looked at him. Was my father involved? Yes. What happened? Thomas took a deep breath. One winter morning, a bridge near Blue Lake became unsafe. Why? There was heavy snow. The bridge broke. Almost what happened? Your father stopped the train. Did he save people? Yes. I looked at the old photographs. There were 23 passengers on the train. Thomas pointed to a photograph. This was the train. The photograph showed an old blue train. It looked exactly like the train from my childhood memories. What happened to it? It was damaged. Was anyone hurt? 2 people were injured. No one died. No, I felt relieved. Then why did the railway close? Because the company did not want to pay for repairs, so they closed it. Yes. What did my father do? He fought against the decision. Why? Because the railway was important to the village. Did he succeed? Thomas shook his head. No, the railway closed. Yes. I looked at the map. Then what is at Blue Lake? Thomas smiled. That is what your father wanted you to discover. I felt frustrated. Why is everyone speaking in riddles? Thomas laughed. Because your father wanted you to find the answer yourself. That makes no sense. It will. He gave me an old key. What is this? It opens something at the railway station. The old station. Yes. I held the key. When should I use it? Tonight. Why tonight? Because some doors are easier to open when the village is quiet. I looked at him. You are strange, he laughed. I have heard that before. That evening, I returned to the railway station. The sun was setting. The village was quiet. Most shops were closed. The old station was empty. I entered through the side door. The lights did not work. I used my phone to see. I walked down a narrow hallway. At the end was a wooden door. There was a small metal lock. I took out the key. It fit perfectly. I opened the door. Inside was a small room. There were boxes everywhere. Old tools. Books. Maps. Photographs. I found a desk. On the desk was a small wooden box. My name was written on it. Anna. My hands started shaking. I opened the box. Inside was a letter. It was from my father. Dear Anna, if you are reading this, you are older now. I wanted to tell you many things, but when you were young, I did not want you to carry my problems. I knew that one day you would return. When you do, follow the railway line to Blue Lake. There is a small house beside the lake. The house belongs to our family. Inside, you will find the answer to a question I could never answer. Why do we leave some places? Why do we return? And why do some journeys change us forever? I hope you find your answer. Love, Dad. I cried. I had not cried about my father in many years. I sat on the floor. I held the letter against my chest. Why didn't you tell me? There was no answer, only silence. After a few minutes, I stood up. I looked around the room. There was another photograph. It showed the blue train. On the back was written, Saturday, 10 a.m. I looked at the calendar on my phone. It was Saturday. The old train still existed. I walked outside. Thomas was waiting. You found the letter? Yes. Are you ready? For what? To go to Blue Lake. The next morning, Thomas took me to a small shed behind the station. There was an old blue train inside. I could not believe my eyes. The train is still here. Thomas smiled. Your father saved it. Why? He believed that one day it would run again. Can it still work? We will find out. A man named Peter was waiting for us. He was a railway mechanic. Hello, Anna. Hello. Your father taught me everything I know, really. Yes. Peter walked around the train. We have repaired the engine. Does it work? Mostly. He laughed. Old trains are like old people. What do you mean? They make strange sounds. Thomas laughed. Peter opened the door. Come inside. The train was beautiful. The seats were old. The windows were large. The walls were dark blue. I touched one of the seats. I remember this. You were on this train when you were a child, Thomas said. Yes, my father brought me. Many times. I smiled. I don't remember. You were very young. Peter started the engine. The train made a loud sound. Then it became quiet. He tried again. The engine came alive. The train shook. I laughed. It works. Peter smiled. Your father would be happy. We left the station at 10. The old blue train slowly moved through Maple Hill. People came outside to watch. Children waved. Old people smiled. The railway line was partly covered by plants, but Peter had repaired the most important parts. The train moved slowly. We passed fields. We passed the forest. We passed a small river. Then the village disappeared. Looked out of the window. For the first time, I understood why my father loved this place. The world looked peaceful. After 1 hour, we reached the old bridge. Peter stopped the train. The bridge is not safe, so we cannot continue. Not with the train. Thomas pointed toward a path. We walk from here. We got out. I carried my small backpack. Thomas carried a map. Peter stayed with the train. The forest was quiet. We followed the old railway line. Trees grew around the tracks. Birds sang above us. The air was fresh. After about 40 minutes, we saw water through the trees. Blue Lake. It was beautiful. The water was clear and blue. Mountains stood behind it, and beside the lake was a small wooden house. My father's house. The house was old. The roof needed repair. The windows were dusty, but it looked peaceful. I opened the door. Inside, there was a small table. 2 chairs, a bed, fireplace. And many books. On the wall was another photograph of my father. He was standing beside the lake. I walked closer. There was writing underneath. Some places stay in our hearts even when we leave them. I touched the words. Thomas stood behind me. Your father spent many weekends here. Why? He liked the quiet. I walked outside. The lake was calm. I sat near the water. For a few minutes. No one spoke. Then I asked, what was my father like when he was young? Thomas smiled. Brave? Was he happy? Usually. Did he ever talk about me? Every day. I looked at him. Really? Yes. What did he say? He said, you were the reason he wanted to make the railway safe. I looked at the lake. Why? He wanted you to grow up in a world where people could travel safely. I smiled through my tears. Then, Thomas gave me another envelope. This is the final letter. I opened it. My father's handwriting was clear. Anna, if you are reading this, you have reached Blue Lake. You may be wondering why I wanted you to come here. The answer is simple. I wanted you to see the place where I felt most alive. I wanted you to understand that life is not only about work, it is about moments. A quiet morning, a long conversation, a train journey, a lake, a friend, a family. These small things become our memories. When I was young, I believed I had to choose between my work and my family. I was wrong. The most important work is taking care of the people we love. I hope you never make the same mistake. Do not spend your whole life waiting for the perfect moment. There is no perfect moment. There is only now. Love. Dad. I folded the letter. I looked at the lake. I understand now. Thomas nodded. What do you understand? Why he brought me here. Why? Because he wanted me to stop running. We planned to stay at the house for one night, but in the afternoon, dark clouds appeared. Thomas looked at the sky. We should leave. Why? Storm. Peter had stayed with the train. We started walking back. The wind became stronger. Rain began to fall. Then the rain became heavy. The path became muddy. Thunder sounded. Above us, we walked faster. Suddenly, Thomas stopped Anna. "Where is the map?" I looked at my bag. It was gone. I remembered. I had left it at the lake house. "We need it. The path divides ahead." I looked around. Everything looked different in the rain. "We can go back." "No, why?" "The lake is safer." We turned around, but then we heard a loud sound. A tree had fallen across the path. We could not go that way. Thomas looked worried. "We need another route." I took out my phone. There was no signal. The rain became heavier. We walked through the forest. I was scared. "Thomas." "Yes." "What if we get lost?" "We won't." "How do you know?" "I know these woods." But after 20 minutes, he stopped. He looked around. "I don't recognize this place." I felt panic. "We are lost." Thomas took a deep breath. "Stay calm." "How can I stay calm?" "Because panic will not help." We continued walking. Then I saw something. A small wooden sign. "Blue Lake 2 km." I smiled. "We found the path." Thomas laughed. "Your father would be proud." We followed the sign. After an hour, we reached the lake. The storm became stronger. We entered the house. We were completely wet. Peter was not there. What happened to him? I asked. Thomas looked worried. He probably stayed with the train. We waited. 1 hour, 2 hours. 3 hours. No Peter. The storm continued. Then, late at night, we heard a sound, a train horn. Thomas stood up. "Peter." We went outside. The old blue train was slowly coming toward the house. Peter was inside. He opened the door. "Get in." We ran toward the train. "Are you okay?" I asked. "Yes." "What happened?" "The storm damaged the bridge. We can't go back. Not tonight." So we stayed on the train. The rain continued all night. The next morning, the storm had disappeared. The sky was blue. The lake was calm. Birds were singing. It was hard to believe. There had been a storm. Peter checked the railway. "We cannot cross the bridge." "How long will it take to repair?" "Maybe 2 days." Thomas looked at me. "We have enough food." I laughed. "So we are staying." "Looks like it." For 2 days, we stayed near Blue Lake. We repaired the small house. We cleaned the rooms. We cooked simple food. We talked. I learned many things about my father. He had been a young man with big dreams. He wanted to build safe railways. He wanted to travel. He wanted to see mountains. He wanted to learn about other countries. But he also loved Maple Hill. He was always between 2 worlds, Thomas said. "What worlds?" "Adventure and home." I understood. Maybe I was like him. I wanted to travel, but I also wanted a place to return to. On the second evening, I sat beside the lake. Peter joined me. "Your father used to sit here, did he?" "Every time he came." "What did he do?" "Nothing." I laughed. "Nothing." "Yes. He just sat here." "Sometimes that is enough." I looked at the water. Peter was right. Sometimes we do not need to do anything. Sometimes we only need to be somewhere. On the third morning, the bridge was repaired enough for the train to cross. We started our journey back. When we reached Maple Hill, many people were waiting. They cheered when they saw the blue train. Children ran beside it. People waved. I looked at the village. Then I had an idea. What if the train runs again? Thomas looked at me. "What do you mean?" "The railway, it is closed." "I know, but why?" "Because no one wants to repair it." Thomas smiled. "Are you thinking about reopening it?" "Yes," Peter laughed. "That is a big project, I know. Very expensive, I know. Very difficult, I know." Thomas looked at me. "Your father would have loved that idea." I smiled. "We can try." We spent the next few months working on the project. I returned to Westbridge. I spoke to railway companies. I spoke to local officials. I spoke to business owners. I created a plan. The idea was simple. We wanted to reopen the railway as a small tourist line. The train would run from Westbridge to Maple Hill, then From Maple Hill to Blue Lake, people could visit the village. They could see the forest, they could visit the lake, they could ride the old blue train. At first, many people said no, it is too expensive, it will not make money. Nobody will come, but I continued. Remembered my father's words, there is no perfect moment, there is only now. I took one small step, then another. Then another. After 1 year, the railway project received approval. I could not believe it. The blue train would run again. People from Westbridge could visit Maple Hill. The old station would open. The railway would return. I called my mother. Mum, we did it. She started crying. I knew you could. Did Dad know this would happen? Maybe. We held the first journey on a sunny Saturday. The station was full of people, families, children, older couples, young travelers. Everyone wanted to ride the old blue train. I stood on the platform. I looked at the train. It was clean. Its windows were bright. Its blue paint had been repaired. That the engine was ready. Thomas stood beside me. Are you nervous? Very good. Why good? Because it means you care. The train horn sounded. People cheered. I climbed aboard. The doors closed. The train started moving. Slowly. Quietly. Then faster. We passed the fields. We passed the forest. We crossed the new bridge. We reached Blue Lake. When the passengers saw the lake, everyone became quiet. For a few seconds, nobody spoke. Then a little girl said,
"Wow."
Her mother smiled. I looked out of the window. I remembered my father. I wished he could see this. Then I understood something. Maybe he was there, not in the train. Not beside me, but in every part of the journey, in the railway, in the lake, in the people, in me. After the train arrived at Blue Lake, I walked near the water. A little girl was sitting alone on a bench. She was about 10 years old. She was looking at the lake. Do you like it? I asked. She nodded. It is beautiful. Have you ever been here before? No. Do you like the train? Yes. What is your favorite part? She thought for a moment. The sound, the train sound. She nodded. It sounds like an old story. I smiled. That's a good way to describe it. She looked at me. Do you own the train? No. Do you work on it? Yes. Why? Because I wanted people to see this place. Why? I looked at the lake. Because someone once brought me here. Who? My father? Is he here? I smiled sadly. No. She looked down. I'm sorry, thank you. She was quiet. Then she asked, did he like the lake? Very much. Then maybe he can see it. I looked at her. What do you mean? She pointed toward the sky. Maybe people we love can still see beautiful things through us. I did not know what to say. The girl stood up. My mother is waiting. She ran away. I watched her go. Sometimes wisdom comes from unexpected people. Even children can teach us something. A few months later, I decided to return to my old job at the bookstore in Westbridge, not as an employee. As the owner. The owner wanted to retire. I bought the small bookstore. I changed its name. I called it the Blue Lake Bookstore. I filled it with travel books, storybooks, history books, books about trains. Books about villages. Books about mountains and lakes. There was also a small reading area near the window. People could sit there and read. Every Saturday, I told stories to children. Sometimes I talked about travel. Sometimes I talked about courage. Sometimes I talked about family. Sometimes I simply listened. One day, a young boy came to the bookstore. He was holding a map. Can you help me? Of course. He opened the map. I want to travel. Where? Everywhere. I smiled. That is a big plan. Where should I start? I pointed to the map. Start somewhere close. Why? Because every big journey begins somewhere. He smiled. Can I take this map? Yes. How much? It is free. Really? Yes. Why? Because someone once helped me. He smiled. Thank you. You're welcome. After he left, I thought about my father. Kindness moves from one person to another. One summer, my mother visited Blue Lake. She had never been there before. We took the blue train together. She sat beside the window. She looked nervous. You have traveled on this train many times, she said. Yes, your father loved trains. I know. She smiled. I wish I had come here earlier. Why? I was afraid. Of what? Of remembering him. I held her hand. Maybe. Remembering is not always painful. She looked at me. Sometimes it is, yes, but sometimes it is also beautiful. She nodded. When we reached the lake, she became quiet. We walked toward the water. She looked around. This place is beautiful. Yes, your father would have loved it. He did. She sat on a bench. I sat beside her for a long time. Neither of us spoke. Then she said, I am proud of you. Thank you. You became the person your father wanted you to become. I looked at her. What person? A person who keeps going. I smiled. I learned from him. She nodded. We all did. Years later, I found my father's notebook again. It had been inside a box in the old house. I opened it. There were hundreds of pages. Some were about trains. Some were about engineering. Some were about places he wanted to visit. But near the end, I found something different. It was a list. The title was, Things I Want Anna to Know. Read the first line. Life is short. The second line said, Do not waste it, trying to make everyone happy. The third, work hard. But remember to rest. The fourth, travel when you can. The fifth, ask questions. The sixth, forgive people. The seventh, do not be afraid of starting again. The eighth, tell people you love them. The ninth, help someone whenever you can. The 10th, and never forget where you came from. I closed the notebook. I cried. Then I smiled. My father had left me many things: a house, a train, a railway, lake, a story, but the greatest thing he left me was a lesson. Really live. When I was I made another decision. I wanted to travel around the world. Had spent years building the railway. I had spent years working at the bookstore. I had spent years helping people travel. Now, I wanted to travel myself. I told Thomas. He smiled. I was waiting for this. What do you mean? You have been standing in the same place for too long. I laughed. Where should I go? Anywhere. What did you learn from traveling? That you don't need a perfect plan. So I made a simple plan. I would travel for 1 year. I would visit different countries. I would meet people. Would learn languages. Would write stories, and when I returned, I would share them. Before leaving, I visited Blue Lake. I sat near the water. That old blue train was behind me. Opened my father's notebook. I read the last sentence. Go where your heart is. Curious, I closed the book. Then I stood up. My new journey was beginning. My first stop was a small country across the sea. I had never been there. I knew very little about it. I had stayed in a small guest house. The owner was an old woman named Maria. She spoke slowly because she knew my language was not perfect. You were traveling alone. Yes. Are you afraid? A little. She smiled. Good. I laughed. Everyone says that, because it is true. She gave me a room. That evening, she cooked dinner. We sat together at a small table. She asked me about my home. I told her about Maple Hill. I told her about Blue Lake. I told her about my father. She listened. Then, she told me about her family. Her husband had died many years earlier. Her children lived in different countries. She ran the guest house alone. Do you ever feel lonely? I asked. Sometimes. What do you do? I opened the door to the guest house. Yes, she smiled. People come in. I understood. Sometimes loneliness becomes smaller when we open the door. 3 months into my journey, I made a serious mistake. I lost my passport. I was in a crowded city. I had been walking around all day. When I returned to my hotel, I opened my bag. My passport was gone. I checked. Everything. Nothing. I felt sick. I called the police. I contacted my country's embassy. I searched the streets. Nothing. I sat on a bench and started to panic. Then, I remembered something my father had written. Do not be afraid of starting again. I took a deep breath. I made a list, called the embassy. Get a temporary document. Contact the hotel, check the train station, check the restaurant. Ask the police, one by one. I did everything. The next morning, someone called me. Are you Anna? Yes, we found your passport. I could not believe it. Where? In a cafe. I went. There an old man gave it to me. You dropped it. Thank you, he smiled. Be more careful. I will. He laughed. I gave him a small gift. He refused. Number need, but thank you. Just help someone else one day. I smiled. The same lesson. Again, kindness moves from one person to another. 6 months into my journey, I visited a small village in the mountains. There were only about 50 houses. The roads were narrow. The air was cold. The mountains were covered with snow. I stayed with a family. The father was a farmer. The mother made bread. They had 2 children. At dinner, they asked me why I traveled. I thought about the question. At the beginning of my journey, I would have said, I want to see the world. Now my answer was different. I want to understand people. The father smiled. Then you are in the right place. I spent 1 week with the family. I helped on the farm. I carried wood. I fed animals. I helped the children with English. They taught me words in their language. We laughed at our mistakes. On my last evening, the father gave me a small wooden box. What is this? Open it. Inside was a tiny wooden train. I smiled. A train? Yes, why you told us about the blue train. I did. Now you have another train. I thanked him. I carried that little wooden train for the rest of my journey. After 1 year, I was ready to return. I had seen mountains. I had seen oceans. I had visited cities. I stayed in villages. I had met hundreds of people. I had learned new words. I had made mistakes. I had lost things. I had found things, but most importantly, I had learned that the world was much larger than I had imagined. And yet people were not so different. They laughed, they cried, they worked, they dreamed, they worried, they loved, they hoped. Everyone wanted a good life. Everyone wanted someone to understand them. When I returned to Westbridge, I went directly to the bookstore. The blue sign was still there. The shelves were full. People were reading. Children were laughing. I stood at the door. I felt at home then. I saw something on the counter. A letter. My name was written on it. I opened it. It was from Thomas. Welcome home. But remember, home is not only one place. Home is every place where your heart feels safe. Keep traveling, keep learning, keep helping, and keep telling stories. Thomas. I smiled. Then I looked out the window. A train passed in the distance. For a moment, I could hear my father's voice. One day, Anna, I whispered, I did it, Dad. Many years have passed since I received that first letter. The railway still runs. The bookstore still exists. The blue train still travels to Blue Lake every Saturday. Sometimes I sit on the train and watch people. I watch families. I watch children. I watch old couples. I watch travelers. Everyone has a reason for being there. Some want adventure, some want peace, some want to escape their problems, some want to make memories, some simply want to see the lake. And sometimes I see a person sitting alone. They look worried. They look afraid. They look like the person I used to be. When I see them, I smile. Sometimes I start a conversation. Is this your first time? They usually say yes. Then I tell them, you are going to like the lake. Sometimes they ask, have you been there before? I smile, many times. Do you live there? No. Then why do you keep going back? I always give the same answer. Because some places are not meant to be visited only once. The train continues through the forest. The trees move past the windows. The old engine makes its familiar sound, children laugh, people talk, the mountains appear, then the lake comes into view. Every time I see it, I remember my father, I remember the old house, I remember the letter, I remember the storm. I remember being afraid, I remember finding the courage to continue. And I remember the first lesson of my journey. You do not need to know the whole road, you only need to take the next step. That lesson has helped me many times when I lost my passport. I took the next step. When the railway project seemed impossible, I took the next step. When I was afraid to travel, I took the next step. When I missed my father, I took the next step. When I did not know what to do, I took the next step. Life is often like that. We want answers, we want maps, we want to know what will happen tomorrow. But life does not always give us those things. Sometimes the road is hidden, sometimes the weather changes, sometimes the bridge breaks, sometimes we get lost, sometimes we make mistakes, but that does not mean the journey is over. It means we need to find another road. We need to stop, think, ask for help, and continue. I learned that from my father. I learned it from Thomas. I learned it from strangers. I learned it from children. And I learned it from the road. One Saturday morning, I was sitting on the blue train when I noticed a young woman sitting alone. She was looking out of the window. She looked nervous. I smiled. "Is this your first trip to Blue Lake?" She nodded, double quotes, "Yes." "Are you traveling alone?" "Yes." "Are you okay?" She smiled. "I think so." "What brings you here?" She looked down. "I don't know." I laughed, gently. "That's okay." She looked at me. "Is it?" "Yes." "Why?" "Sometimes we don't know what we are looking for until we find it." She smiled. "Did you come here for the same reason?" "Many years ago." "Did you find what you were looking for?" I looked out of the window. "Yes." "What?" I thought about my answer. "I found a place where I could hear my own thoughts." She smiled. "I like that." We talked for the rest of the journey. She told me that she had recently left her job. She did not know what she wanted to do next. She was afraid. I understood. I told her, being uncertain is not the same as being lost. She looked at me. "What does that mean?" "It means you can be unsure about the future and still be moving forward." She was quiet, then she smiled. "Thank you." When we reached Blue Lake, she walked toward the water. I stayed behind. I watched her stand beside the lake. She closed her eyes, the wind moved her hair. She took a deep breath, then she smiled. I knew that feeling. Sometimes the answer does not arrive as words. Sometimes it arrives as peace. When I was young, I thought a journey was about distance. I thought the farther you traveled, the more important the journey was. Now I know that is not true. You can travel thousands of kilometers and learn nothing. You can walk around your own town and discover something new. The important thing is not how far you go. The important thing is what you see, what you learn, who you meet, how you change. My journey started with a letter. It continued with a train. Then came a lake, a storm, a lost passport, a new country, a mountain village, a bookstore, and many people. But the real journey happened inside me. I became more patient. I became more confident. I learned to ask for help. I learned to help others. I learned that fear does not have to control us. I learned that sadness can exist beside happiness. I learned that leaving home does not mean forgetting home. And I learned that sometimes we return to the same place as a completely different person. Maple Hill was the same. The railway was the same. The lake was the same, but I was different. That is what journeys do. They change the person who takes them. I am now an old woman. My hair is gray. My hands are not as strong as they were. I walk slowly, but I still ride the blue train, every Saturday. I sit near the window. I carry my father's notebook. I carry the little wooden train from the mountain village, and sometimes I carry a new story. The train still makes the same sound. The same trees pass the window. The same lake waits at the end. One morning, I looked around the train. There were many passengers. Some were sleeping, some were talking, some were taking photographs. A little boy was looking out of the window. He suddenly turned to me. Are we almost there? I smiled. Almost. Is the lake beautiful? Very. Have you seen it before? Many times. Why do you keep coming? I looked at him, because I always see something different. He thought about that. How? Because I am different. He smiled. Then he turned back to the window. The train continued forward. I opened my father's notebook. On the last page, I had written something myself. Dear Dad, I finally understand. You were never trying to send me to Blue Lake. You were trying to teach me how to live. Thank you, your daughter, Anna. I closed the notebook. The lake appeared, blue dot, quiet, beautiful, beautiful. The train slowed down, people stood up, children became excited. The doors opened, everyone walked outside. I stayed in my seat for a moment. I looked around the old blue train. Then I stood up. I walked toward the door. The sun was shining, the lake was waiting. I took one small step, then another, and I smiled. Because after all these years, I finally understood something. A journey does not really end when you reach your destination. A journey ends when you stop learning. And I never wanted to stop, so I kept walking. I kept listening. I kept learning. I kept helping. I kept traveling. And I kept telling stories. Because somewhere, there is always another person sitting beside a window. Someone who is afraid. Someone who is waiting. Someone who thinks they are lost. And maybe they only need to hear one simple sentence. Take the next step.